Hello, Kalimera. Hello from Poros in Greece. Welcome to the Marina Technology Looking Forward session as part of the World Marina Conference Industry Reconnect virtual event. This event was set to keep our industry connected following the postponement of the World Marina Conference in Dubai for the next year. I'm Idan Cohen, the chairman of the Israeli Marine Innovation Association, an NGO that was established to promote the innovation within the boating sector in Israel and in the international arena. I'm also the CEO of Pick a Pier, a technological company for the marine industry promoting the digital boating transformation. I would like to thank ICOMIA Secretariat for the fascinating serious event. There has been a lot of hard work put into it. Before we begin, some rules. Please feel free to submit questions at any time. All the questions will be visible. Please make clear who is the question is aimed at, and we'll try to answer all the questions that we can. This webinar will be recorded and available for everyone who wishes to watch it later. Technology plays an important role in many parts of our lives. In the past few decades, humanity became interconnected as never before. Everything today is at our fingerprints, and the younger generation don't know how to do things otherwise. Sustainability considerations play an increasing role in our decisions making, forcing us to think not only about ourselves and our customers, but also about our surroundings and how we affect them. As the most ancient way of transportation, boating has always been more conservative and traditional. In some aspects, we still follow protocols that were written hundreds of years ago, such as the yellow flag sign to signal vessels' healthiness as its interest to the port. But like any other traditional aspect of our life, we all know that boating should move forward as well. Everything around us moving with the speed of light. Flights and their surrounding services are being aggregated into perfectly seamless platforms. Cars are advancing to become electric and driverless. Cities turn to be interconnected hubs of services. But more than anything, people are getting used to the easiness and simplicity. They get accustomed to one-click actions and to technology that does the job for them. In this session, we will discuss how the recreational boating will look like in light of technological developments, which activities that are burdensome today will be lifted off our shoulders tomorrow. Talking with Albert Wilsman and Giovanni Preda from the Life Marina Plan project. We also discuss how will look the communication between service providers and customers, talking with Tom Mukmal, the CEO of IGY Marinas. We'll discuss how our boats going to look like and how this will affect the profile of boaters and marinas by Puntas Fermenstone, EMEA Marine Segment Director in Garmin Europe. We'll also discuss how to bring innovation to marinas, streamlining their operations by Ian Archibald, the CEO of Swell Advantage, and how the environmental concern will shape the way we sustain our growth, presented by Shimrit Pirkol-Frenkel, CEO of a startup that's developing bio-enhancing concrete technology, ICOMIA. We'll start with Albert and Giovanni. We would like to start from a very important innovation initiative that is designed to solve very stubborn challenge for our industry. In our current world, many problems can be solved technologically. Many burdens can be lifted off our shoulders and addressed in a sustainable and efficient way. Our way to growth passes through developing more and more solutions like the Life Marina Plan. This project gives us tools to seabed maintenance and sediment bypassing, but it's much bigger than that. It gives us a state of mind that our ecological footprint can be and should be minimized. Since 1988, Albert Wilsman has worked in the boating, marina, and super yacht industries, initially as part of the Ishwa Holland marine industry. In 2005, he was appointed as the ICOMIA environmental consultant, specializing in super yacht coatings and environmental legislation. Today, Albert is leading the Life Marina Plan project, funded by the EU to develop harbor siting. Albert, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, all. Just a brief introduction by Aiden was, I have not much to add. I'd like to go to the next slide. Today we have the World Marina Conference. I had the time in the mid-90s when we started with the international marina conferences. At that particular time in Genoa and in Amsterdam, we noticed that one of the biggest issues at that particular time was dredging, nautical dredging. All kind of new regulations, all kind of new laws, all kind of new legislations and measures. And also what we call today sustainability has an effect on dredging. It was increasing the costs. It was increasing a lot of difficulties to get a permit for dredging. And the end of the two conferences resulted in a global scan of all dredging issues worldwide. That was not an easy job. Within the IEC, let's say the Environmental Committee of ICOMIA, together with the IMG, the Marina group of ICOMIA, we set up, let's say, a scheme of potential solutions. The potential solutions, we went to Piank and it was resulting in report 130. Next slide, please. In that report, you will find all kinds of problems of hydraulic infrastructures. In fact, what kind of influence has the infrastructure on the sediment? What kind of influence it has on, let's say, on the quality of sediment? And also, how much are we dredging? How much is there, let's say, more or less has to be dumped? Is there, are we talking about erosion or not? Next slide, please. So all that was related to report 160 of 130. Members who attended the World Marina Conferences 2016 in Amsterdam noticed that we presented that report and we gave a lot of solutions for anti-sedimentation systems. But one of the things we didn't, that was a sustainable way with new technical solutions by sediment bypassing. That was still missing. At that, next slide, please. At that moment, together with the University of Bologna, with Trevi, where Giovanni is working as a project leader related to this plan, we decided to ask for European funding. And it is applicable to all the marinas worldwide. Although it's funded by the European Commission, it's not aimed at Europe. It's really worldwide. With a team of more than 25, we worked on this project, and it was on the, let's say, guidance from a few other persons, like you can see on the slide. If we go to the next one. Next slide, please. What is very important for the marina operators, although we mentioned many times before, you don't need an environmental permit for dredging with this system. It has to be in compliance with all kinds of regulations. And not only in Europe, but also international, because ICOMIA and Marina Conference is not focusing on Europe, it is really international. In Europe, it is in compliance with the two main directives, the two main laws, which is the Water Framework Directive and the Maritime Strategy Directive. Both, let's say with both, it's completely in compliance. But it is also in compliance with the regional sea conventions, which is part of the Maritime Strategy Directive in Europe. As well, it's if you look, let's say, for example, in the US, it's in relation to the Clean Water Act and the US suction regulations. Within the UN and IMO, it's in let's say, in compliance with the London Convention. London Convention is dealing with dumping dredge materials. And of course, we're taking all in account all the advices of ICES. It's the International Council of Explorations of the Sea. You can see that it's not, let's say, an easy plan and not an easy target to achieve, but we did. During the meeting last week with the European Commission, everybody was pleased, and the project is almost finished. And I'm quite happy to give the word to Giovanni Preda. He's from Trevi. He's the project leader on this system, and he will explain more technical items. Giovanni?
Yeah. Thank you, Albert, and thank you, Idan, for the opportunity to discuss and to share the technology with all of you. So let's go back to the main issue. We are talking about maintenance dredging and the problem which are involved in dredging. So first of all, the environmental impacts, also the economical impacts, because the structures have to be temporarily closed, or you could you should suspend all the economical activities while the dredge is working. Next slide, please. So if we put in a graph navigability versus environmental sustainability, we can see that we can reduce the dredging related impacts, but we need a technological breakthrough to have both high navigability and high environmental sustainability. So the innovation should be aimed to reduce the noise related to the technology, so to the dredging activities, the impacts on seabed integrity, the impacts related to the turbidity in the surrounding, the waste disposal, which is a huge problem, and the emissions. Last, the innovation should also be aimed to make the budget planning easier for the port or marina, so in general for the infrastructure managers. So next slide, please. Okay, so our proposal is to do it with small devices put in place on the port entrance or where are needed. So a net of small devices which work with nature, so which work only with the solid particles settling in a certain area. These devices can minimize the environmental impacts. They work without turbidity. They are small, so they are not an obstacle for the port operation, and they can be fully integrated into the landscape or into the architecture. You should consider that those devices are like barrels, so 30 centimeters of diameter and 50 centimeters of length. And they work thanks to the Venturi effect. So no oil or engines or whatever are put in place in water. Next slide, please. If you have a look on the application in Cervia, a small marina on the Adriatic coast in Italy, we can see how it works. If we know the sediment dynamics, the siltation dynamics, we could put those devices in a proper net. And if we think about a mainstream coming from left to right, and the solid particles settling due to the interference between the mainstream and the port entrance channel, the devices simply suck the settling particles and give them back to the mainstream. So the technology works also against the erosion. Next slide, please. So there are different applications: port entrances or marina, shipyards, and in general launching facilities, docks, or also reservoir and freshwater structures. And which is the value the technologies aim to sustainability. So it has no proven effects on benthos and the environment, no proven underwater noise, and obviously this is just a sediment bypass, so it's not dredging, and so no waste has to be disposed. And also it's ongoing, the Envision certification. So the design of this technology will be certified from an independent administration association as sustainable. Last slide, please. So what do we need to design or to properly design an application? Okay, the siltation dynamics has to be well known at the design stage in order to make the devices, the ejectors net efficient. We only need electricity during the installation and during mm, the plant working. So in the end, we need also a proper maintenance, because this is a plant. And you can see the two plants we have already installed. On the left side, the Cervia Marina on the port entrance, and on the right side, one small plant on the launching facility of a GAM shipyard in Cattolica, where Ferretti launches its own boat. So thank you, Idan, thank you, ICOMIA, for the opportunity to share it with you, and looking forward for questions. Thank you.
I see you already received a few, and we'll get back to it at the end of the session with the Q&A part. We will move now to the next topic.
Okay.
So the communication between marinas and boaters has never been what? Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you. The communication between marinas and boaters has never been more crucial than today. Instructions and requirements are changing very often. There is a high level of uncertainty regarding the availability of destinations and their safety. There are numerous new regulations that require both sides to comply and verify an ever-increasing amount of information. And people, in general, are looking for stability and reliability in their lives. The communication between boaters and marinas was a challenge for many years, and there are a lot of discussions regarding the way it will look like in the future, especially when COVID-19 is changing everything we know. Tom Mukmal is the CEO of IGY, Island Global Yachting. In his role, Tom oversees all of its financial activities, strategic initiatives, development and operations, and developing key global commercial partnerships. Tom is managing a chain of 18 marinas in diverse popular destinations, both in Europe and the US, that combines many of the challenges that the industry faces as a whole. Tom will share with us how he envisions the future of interaction with marina customers and their needs. Hello, Tom. Hello, Tom.
Good morning, good afternoon. And I will say to Giovanni and Albert, when you perfect that product, we will be one of the first online to work with you. It certainly is that's quite a challenge to overcome. But thank you for having me. You know, I didn't prepare slides as we discussed, but I thought I would kind of share some thoughts, and obviously if people have questions to put them in the chat box. You know, one of the things, I've been doing this for about 13 years. In the beginning, our company had partnered with a software developer to build out its own platform. And I think it was a cautionary tale for where we were at the time, and a lot has changed since then. At that time, there were really only two platforms out there, I won't name them, that didn't fit the needs of where the company was going. And the company basically contracted to build out its own platform, which turned out to be quite a mistake for a whole host of reasons, partially because none of us were technologists. But I do think that what it did show at the time was that, and I think this to some level holds true today, is that this industry is sort of having to kind of do it the hard way. And it's really, but I think it will take us to a better place, which is really, it's going to be much more of a ground up effort. And I think if I was thinking about why is that? And I think that part of that is because, marinas don't fit neatly into a single industrial box. Everybody goes to different marinas. One of the things about every marina is they all look different. They're all beautiful in their, or most are in their own right. They're sized differently. They're laid out differently. They're in different geographical jurisdictions under different regimes, different languages, different cultures. And so because they're hard to place into a single box, I think that makes the business proposition for them when you're not in the industry a little bit more difficult to figure out. So, people have said, can I replicate the hotel model as a software provider in the marina industry? And the answer is maybe we can, but it's a much smaller industry, number one, and it's more complicated, number two, as Don, as you pointed out. And so what that does, I think, when we really take another step back and say, well, what problem does that create, especially for the folks that are trying to solve our problems and customer problems, is how do you get money? How do you attract funding to basically solve those problems? And when you're talking about going to places like Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley in New York, or its equivalents in Europe or Asia, it's harder. It's a harder slog. And so I think that to some level, that has sort of created some of the challenges for us about how do we accelerate development of good products that are going to help the industry grow. And I had been thinking about that over the past week. And so I think that's a big challenge for us collectively, and for people smarter than me to kind of figure out how best to frame those challenges. And certainly as an industry participant, all of us can help pass on information to help the technologists sort of solve those problems. But as I was Don, as you and I were talking, we had said, the problems really are the same across industries, which is how do we make the customer experience more transparent? How do we make it a little more standardized, but keep an authentic experience for customers? And how do we make it more user-friendly for the operators? And so, part of the mandate of this discussion is really to sort of draw some distinctions between markets. I think that if you're a static boater, a non-transient boater, that's one set of problems. And I think this goes to the whole industry generally, that it isn't sort of all one size fits all. If you're a static boater, or your boat's in a dry storage and you really just kind of go out of one place, software can provide, technology can provide a much better mode of communication. It's an easier problem to solve. And then the more we cross borders, the more the infrastructure gets complicated, the more difficult these problems are to tackle, because as soon as you peel back one layer, you just find it's just another problem to deal with, or another challenge to overcome. I saw on the panel, on the participant box, as a few of my colleagues are on there, and I could just give an example that's more relevant today around COVID and the availability of information around what port regulations look like, to pass in and out of neighboring jurisdictions if you're basing from one jurisdiction, and what's the availability to get a medical screening in a certain location, is changing every day. And it's it's a problem. It's a today problem. Hopefully it's not a problem 2 years from now, but these are the sorts of things that we'll have to deal with. So, and that's just the customer facing element of it. And the other customer being the operator, how do we manage documents? What does a CRM look like for our customers? Is that Excel? Is it dial up? Is it telephone? It's probably all of the above in many cases at this point. How do we manage our community groups inside of marinas? How do we communicate with them? We have seasonal boaters that are there all the time in their own community. Are we doing it by text? Are we doing it by phone? And I think if we pull, we are a fairly sophisticated operator, but if I went around to all of our general managers, I'm going to get a different answer, I think, from every single one of them at this point in time. In fact, we are our parent company is a regulated broker dealer. We're not supposed to be using WhatsApp at all, but we got a special exemption for all of our managers and dock staff because that is a preferred method of communication with boaters right now. Is it the best one? Probably not. From an operator perspective, how are we smart about pricing and how are we smart about absorption and yielding? The answer today is sort of a little bit all over the place. And then, for a marina, how could they interface with yacht maintenance and service providers to better communicate with their boaters to make the experience better? So as we looked at it, I do think there are emerging platforms. I think that ultimately this is an easier sell in the United States because it's a single geographic jurisdiction. I think it's an easier sell because we've got several much larger aggregators. We see the asset class institutionalizing more and more and more every month now. And I think COVID has poured gasoline on that fire. Some level, I wish we owned more assets in the United States. We don't. But I think that the market is being viewed as a evolving institutional asset class. And I think that will attract dollars into the assets themselves and dollars into the technologies that support those assets. And so I think that's probably where we'll see at least adoption. Maybe that's not where the innovation is, but maybe that's ultimately where the adoption to facilitate this digital transformation. And we've seen that over the last 6 years with the rise of boat share platforms and different software solutions. And I think all of the engagement that it's driving leads to a point where we've got better adoption of technologies that are really forward thinking, but that are also sort of basic and adopted in other industries already, if I'm a lawyer by training, so I'm a little bit risk averse. If I had to kind of lay my bets, I would say that, probably like most industries, there's no one universal technology that's adopted. It's going to be a hodgepodge of things that work for some and don't work for others. It's hard to beat WhatsApping a captain of a big yacht, because that sort of direct high touch, it's digital, but it's high touch. And easier. It's actually easier now to communicate with the person making those decisions than it was before. But I also think that we'll see better sort of ground up products because you've got folks like yourself, Idan, and others who are sort of in this and dealing with industry people to develop products that work, which is sometimes not the case in other industries where you're dealing first with you have an idea, you deal with the money, and then you go to the customer. So I think we have a better chance of getting products that work. We also have fewer folks participating in the space because it's a bit of a smaller industry. So that's ultimately where I think this ends up. And hopefully where we end up is, with products that sort of respect different vessel categories, different jurisdictions, different cultures, different traditions, like you said in the outset. We're dealing with an industry that is somewhat ancient in many ways, and I've been doing this for 15 years, and I still have to look up certain terms from time to time that I've never heard of before. And more complicated finally around sort of just protecting data and protecting information, especially now that we're doing health screening in certain countries and what have you. So probably too big of a problem for any one provider to tackle. And so there's going to be a dance between multiple different solutions to get us to the right place.
Sounds very good, Tom. This is the future. I really like our conversation. I feel that you touched on every point and every challenge that our industry is facing. You have kind of an eagle view of everything that happens, including the challenges of Europe and the US market. So if you can say one more sentence about how do you envision the future of it? What would be the best thing? How this will look like? How this will work?
I mean, I think ultimately we end up with probably a couple of really good models that are, I think our experience as a quasi partner developer back 10 years ago, the problem really came in that we ended up being looked at as the capital provider as well as the intellectual capital provider. So I think ultimately what needs to drive this is more outside funding into this business so that technologies have time to mature and grow, rather than people that have great ideas and that run on fumes for 3, 4, 5 years. It's not a great business model. So what we really need is to bring in outside money, technology investors into this space that see it as a real business opportunity, which it is. And I think that will drive. First of all, it'll attract more talent. And second of all, it will, it'll help support those, many of whom are on this panel and this participating, to get to where we need to go. And I think that's really ultimately where we need to be. And I think some of the recent commercial activity in the U.S. is trending in that direction.
Sounds good. I see Ian is smiling in some of the answers with the challenges he's facing. We'll touch it soon. I think that the panel will be very interesting as well to hear from you also about your expectations from the technology side. Like on our discussions, you shared with me that I'm operator, so just give me the technology that I need to facilitate my needs, and I think your needs are very important to listen to. I
think the last thing I would say is that as an executive, we deal with internal stakeholders, right? So we've got some people, we have constituencies inside the company that basically need to be satisfied that they're going to be able to continue to do their jobs in a similar fashion to which they're currently accustomed to, which is producing the right reports to the right people, whether they're banks or shareholders or internal reports. And that's a business that's going to continue uninterrupted, and ultimately enhanced. And then from an owner's perspective, it's ultimately, look, this needs to make me more money or save me money in some way. And so I don't think we're at a place where there's like a universal industry acceptance that there is that there is certain technologies that can actually make you more efficient, more better, more financially successful. And I think, one of the comments I hear internally a lot is like, well, yeah, but, big boats, they change their mind at the last minute, or they have a broken engine and they go someplace else, and everything is so fickle that I don't know, like it's just easier to talk to the guy. I think that argument holds, but it just doesn't hold forever. You know what I mean? Like these are problems that can be solved by the right people. And, sometimes it's just like with you and Ian, like just bringing new people in to the equation to say, wait a minute, this isn't the right way of thinking about it. There's a whole other way that you don't even know you haven't thought about it that way. And I think we're open to it, so.
What you can say about the manpower of the industry, how the manpower is dealing with technology, who is the manpower that actually aimed the technology for, except for the stakeholders, or like the marina owners, who is the one that actually operate the technology?
I don't know. I mean, it depends on, if it's part of the challenge is you have so many mom and pop owners where you're just dealing with one person or one family. And then if you have a portfolio operator, you're now dealing with more sophisticated people that you can sort of talk to that it will resonate with. And then a lot of in between, I mean, a lot of the owners in Europe, for example, are either governments. Sometimes you're dealing with a government. I mean, what do they care? They don't care, or you're dealing with a construction company that basically was just pouring concrete. They don't care. Or in Europe where you're selling berths, once it's sold, they don't care, right? Like you have to kind of find the right place where the interests are going to be aligned, and speak to those subsets of people. And again, that's what's interesting. It's almost like, if you think about it, is from a hotel perspective, if you're talking to a company that's operating a convention hotel, it's not the same product as someone who's operating a luxury condo hotel in Miami. They're very different, and you've got to kind of parse through who you're speaking to, and have you have an alignment of interest with those people, or do you need to speak to a different stakeholder group?
Tom, thank you so much. It's always fascinating to talk with you. I guess we'll see you soon at the end of the session with the Q&A. We'll move in now to the next topic.
Great.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, so one of the components that is going through a massive change is the boating technologies. Our boats are evolving with the speed of light, offering new types of applications and features, starting from assisted or even autonomous navigation, high-techy seamless user experience with one-screen operation, IoT and interconnectivity, and the sky's the limit. All of the surrounding ecosystem, including marinas, should follow suit. Puntas Fernstom is the ICOMIA Marine Segment Director in Garmin Europe, a multinational technology company specializing in GPS technology for automotive, aviation, marine, outdoor, and sport activities. Puntas is responsible for Garmin's marine business within the region. Puntas, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's actually perfect for me to come after Tom, because I think we will kind of share a lot of our thoughts, and it is, I think we have a pretty common view of what we are facing. So if we go to the next slide, please. So we can talk about is there any commonality between today's boaters? I mean, if we look at a picture like this, we look at a lot of different activities that's happening on the water today. Exactly like Tom said, they're different people. They might have different needs. But so we need to, first of all, try to find something that they have in common. So if we can go forward, please. And yes, of course, they have a lot of things in common. And so we can click to the next slide. It's a little bit too much animations here. So if we can just click a couple of clicks here, and then I can talk about the slide when it's fully done. Okay, thank you. So now go back one, please. All right, so when we look at all these different people, what is their commonality between them? Well, for sure, we know that 99 or maybe close to 100% of the actual leisure boaters today, they are connected 24/7. Their main usage of being connected is through their phones. It could be tablets, but literally everybody carry their phone and they use it for a ton of different applications. Exactly like Tom said, WhatsApp is one of those where they communicate a lot in their normal life. And all these different people that are boaters, when they actually, sometimes when you look at the marine electronics industry, we always step backwards when they go on board their boats. I mean, if you look at their houses, their homes, they are connected. They are running a lot of things from digital platforms. Back in the days, when we talked about marine electronics, it was a screen on the boat that showed a radar, a map, maybe some local weather information that you got through satellite, some sonar pictures, and it was mainly used for navigation. Today, marine electronics is more of a centerpiece of the electronic system on the vessel, where you do tons of different things. You might watch movies, you check your electrical systems, and you do all these different things, and you also show a map. So the mapping and the real navigational side of things from marine electronics have shifted a little bit and have a smaller piece of attention when you go and actually look at the screen, because you use the screen for so many different things. So we all know that all these different peoples, they could be day boaters, they could be mega yacht owners, they could be mega yacht captains, they could be sailors, fishermen, whatever type of activity they do, they will for sure have different needs when it comes to the future technology and what's available out there for them. So if we go to the next slide. So to be able to build the next generation marine electronics, it's going to be a lot of different building blocks than I think the marine electronics industry normally is used to. It is a lot about hardware and making sure that you have the best screens and so on. Of course, that will still be there, but it is turning into more of a platform system where the suppliers of marine electronics will be more dependent on and have to work with other suppliers in the industry to meet the customer's needs than what company like ours are used for. There are a couple of building blocks to make this possible for the future. Of course, connectivity is one thing. We need to be connected. We expect to be connected. 3G, 4G, yeah, that's fine. There's probably 5G coming around the corner, but not all boats are within the coverage all the time. So there will be satellite technologies that will help out in those cases as well. The integration piece, where you integrate more systems into the same infrastructure on board. When you do this, then you can start tying in services and using things like crowdsourcing, maybe augmented reality, artificial intelligence, maybe further down the line, to enhance the experience the boater will want and actually are requesting literally today to be able to get a better time on the water. So if we go to the next slide. I think you can click through here so that we get all of those on the screen. So if we start on where we are today and what we need for tomorrow. So we need to, for tomorrow, to tie in the software with the customer's expectations. Again, there are so many different levels of boaters and different activities. So there will be different needs. Of course, there's a different need from a mega yacht captain coming into a big marina than it is for the dry storage guy that's a weekender that just want to go out and cruise, maybe with a sailboat or powerboat. So tie that into the actual customer. We also hear a lot of these requests coming from the boat builders themselves. They want to customize their whole experience on board the vessel to tie in with their brand and their type of customer. Because at the end of the day, most customers don't have enough time to be on the water today. I think if we go out and ask all the recreational boaters, if they have unlimited time, would they spend more time on their boat tomorrow than they are today? Of course, many of them would say yes. So it's all about to make this life easy. And here is where the service platforms comes in, where we talk about marinas, engine manufacturers, or whomever's got pieces of equipment that's on board the vessel. It's all about making it easy and make sure that you can get service and help just in time. So these are a lot of these questions that we are getting from the industry today of how can we communicate in a good way with the owners of the vessels, where to book a slip, where to get maintenance for their engines or whatever it is on the vessel. We have also been approached by restaurants, food companies, everyone who would like to supply things, because we are living in the world where you, together with your cell phone, you can do a lot of things. You tap on your phone, you can send a message, you can order food, you can get a lot of things happening at the same time. And it feels, the feeling that we get from the industry, which is, I would say, coming from across the platform. Both, I have a lot of experience. I lived in the US for a couple of years, worked a lot with the US boat builders. I'm now responsible for Europe. And the questions that we see are always the same. They want to be a bigger part of the customer's journey. They want to know more about the customers and give better service. A lot of these things are tied into the service platforms. And if we look at what we have today, I mean, most of the hardware is already there. I mean, there is internet connection, there is satellite connection. Of course, the screens are there, all the technology is there. We have control and automation system that's already there as well. It is more of tying these loose ends together. How do we communicate in a good way with Tom's Marinas so that when this vessel comes in, we or the engine provider knows that there is a faulty engine, so that part is already there sitting at the docks when the vessel comes in, or if there is special declarations or things like this. So it's all about tying these knots together, and that the industry in some way, shape, or form figures out a way to have, I know it's going to be hard to have a standard platform that works for everybody, but I think some commonality is needed to actually get this show on the road, because the industry is not big enough. Like people look a lot into the car industry, yes, but there are millions and millions and millions of cars produced every year. It's not that many boats produced every year. So the cost is going to be too high if we don't try to get all of us in together and figure out some kind of level of platform where we can have different service levels to be able to give this service to the customer. One thing that a lot of times when I speak to people in the industry, we are a little bit of an old school industry. And well, this is what we always have done. So if we go to the next slide, I think one key thing for this is it's going to take time. But we need to develop, we need to remember that what we're actually doing is we are developing products for this generation that you look at the screen. The millennials of today, or the younger generation, they don't know anything else except internet. They are used to getting serviced all the time through their phones, through their tablets. That's just their way of living. This is tomorrow's customers. And if we don't start changing the way how we operate with these customers, I think there will be a risk in the future if we just don't try to adopt to the new technology.
Thank you, Pontus. This is a very fascinating issue, I guess. We are now sailing in Greece and using your technology, and I feel that our industry should take off barriers to bring the younger generation get in. Do you think about the COVID-19? Is it stimulating somehow the change that we anticipate in the future? How this affecting Garmin right now?
Well, I think the COVID situation has affected, of course, the marine industry a lot. But we also see, when we speak to the boat builders, we also see that the kind of vacation at home, using your boats more, that the marine industry has seen a little bit of a boom. I mean, if you look at the US market, most of the boat builders are sold out. There are no boats to get. People are buying more boats, buying more equipment. Younger generations are coming in, which has always been a problem in the marine industry, that it's hard to get younger people in because more elderly people do take exit from the industry, and we're not filling in. So if we lose two, we're only going to get one at the other end. We are getting more now, but then we also need to be on our toes and make sure that we also deliver the services and the environment that generation is used to.
Yes, if you can share more with us, what is the expectations from marinas themselves in the future developments of the technology?
Well, I think when we listen to the marinas, I think the marinas, of course, there's a huge possibility for marinas to market themselves to boats in their close proximity. I mean, if you're cruising around like you do right now in Greece, and you have two places to go to, in an easy way to figure out which one should I go to, which one has got the best service that caters to my needs, so that you don't go to one that is full or doesn't have the service that you need. So I think the marinas could really benefit of figuring out a way how to communicate in a very easy way to all these boaters. Because it's just going to be like a selling platform for them to attract more customers into their local marinas.
Yes, yes, very interesting. Thank you, Pontus. We will continue over the Q&A session. Yes. We'll move now to the next topic. Sustainability lies at the core of our values as an industry. We all understand the importance of the sensitive marine ecosystem we enjoy. We also understand the natural resources become increasingly scarce as the global population grows. Improvement in the quality of life increases the demand for leisure, and climate changes add strains to initially strained environments. In Israel, for example, the public discourse around allocating natural assets for leisure is heated. As we speak, my country is in a tough debate about approving the establishment of 6 new marinas. There are concerns for environmental impacts for depriving the public from scarce coastal assets. ICOMIA is also supporting us in our advocacy, and we're very grateful to be part of ICOMIA. New, smart, and sustainable technologies are our only chance to get public approval for expansions of infrastructures. Already today, there are numerous technologies that minimize the ecological footprint of the recreational boating industry and eliminate many of the causes for the reservation arising from future expansion. Shimrit Perkel-Frankel is the co-founder and CEO of eConcrete, a world leader in a bio-enhancing concrete technology. Shimrit has over 20 years of experience in marine biology and ecology in over 30 countries, specializing in ecological enhancement of urban marine habitats, and is considered a world expert in ecological engineering. Shimrit won a prestigious EU Women Innovators Award and was noted as one of the Fast Company's 2019 Top 100 Most Creative People in Business. Shimrit will talk to us about the opportunities that came up today thanks to our technological capabilities and how out-of-the-box thinking can remove barriers and why it is so important to keep our ecological footprint at the minimum. Shimrit, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you all today. And I'm going to take you to a deep dive, slightly away from, let's say, the high-tech world and the electronics, to more concrete elements and really to the foundations of the marinas, and how can we think about the marine ecosystem and to better sustain it when we are designing and constructing our our future marinas. So some of the drivers that we're looking at when we are thinking about sustainability in the marine environment, in the coastlines and the marinas, is obviously the issue of population growth. So we're seeing more and more people that really want to live close to the coastline. At the moment, about 50% of our humanity is concentrated along the coastline, and having multi-billion citizens along the coastline creates a lot of stress on marine ecosystems. This problem is even worsening as we're experiencing climate change impacts like sea level rise and increased storminess. So we have to defend our coastlines and build bigger and kind of stronger coastal defenses for ports, for marinas, and for waterfronts. And all of this activity is also associated with a huge carbon footprint that actually facilitates and accelerates those rates of problems. So this is kind of the logic of the problems and the drivers that have led me to work on trying to reduce the ecological footprint of coastal and marine infrastructure, and even try to reverse it. Instead of having damages, trying to make it productive for the environment. Next slides, please. This problem is very much global. In this UN map, you can see all the lines in red that have been severely altered from their original pristine state. And in the blue dots, you're seeing all the cities that have over 1 million people in population. So basically every place you see, we're seeing less and less sandy shorelines, and we're seeing more and more concrete structures. Next slide, please. And what we need to think about when we're building these concrete structures, and here we can actually see an old seawall in the port of Jaffa, it's a historic seawall, is that we're basically taking what used to be beautiful fringing reef and creating vertical structures that also suffer over time from deterioration, which is something that we obviously want to avoid. From a marine life perspective, concrete is not the ideal habitat. We're seeing concrete as a problem with respect to its alkalinity, with respect to the fact that it's typically very smooth and doesn't offer a lot of shelter, and also the design. You'll see the same type of seawall within the marina, flat and featureless. All of these are driving down the biodiversity, and they're also creating basically a squeeze of the entire coastal zonation onto a very narrow belt, which means that we're going to see a lot less species. And what we're unfortunately seeing is more and more invasive species and weedy species that are actually creating a problem for the operation of the marina, even for the operation of the vessels. And that's something that we want to change. Next slide, please. Now, when we're looking into our options, if we are to develop our coastline, and let's say if we need to build a marina, can we use natural solutions to actually protect the vessels inside of it? Can we use for example, any types of natural defenses to accommodate for the wave reflection, etc. It's typically not the case. We cannot really use living shoreline approaches in the construction of marinas, ports, and also even other city waterfronts. And that's where we're kind of forced to use hard solutions that are about 70% of these are made of concrete, like seawalls, like pier piles, like armor blocks. And that's where I want people to think about, how do we design these things that will not only serve their original purpose, which is to dock, to anchor the boats, or to allow for the facility to be protected, but also to foster marine life. And that's something that we're not doing at the moment. Next, please. Because when we are designing our marinas at the moment, it's a little bit similar to what we're doing in basically building an infrastructure and not guarding it. In the city, we already know how to harness urban nature. So we're looking at vertical green walls, and we know about shading in the city and how important it is to have urban nature in the form of parks, to have shade, pollination zones, places for people to relax. But when we're building our marinas, we're not doing that type of thinking of how can we use the urban marine nature to the best of the ecosystem and even to the best of the structure. And that's kind of where I want to make a shift in change. And next slide, please. So the nature inspiration is very crucial if we are to sustain the marine ecosystem within very urbanized waterfronts like marinas. And we need to think about three components. First of all, the material composition. So can we modify the composition of the concrete, for example, to foster better marine life and not only invasive species? The second level is we need to think about the surface texture. Instead of a default of building completely smooth elements that have a very strong flow across them, can we bring some low-level complexity to allow for larvae to actually attack and attach to the surface? And finally, can we use three-dimensional designs to really allow for some ecosystem features like holes for specific fish that we want to enhance, or water retaining features like rock pools? Next slide, please. And my specific work around the last over a decade has been around really redesigning concrete and in a way that will foster marine growth. And this is kind of a simulation of one of our concrete panels before and after being in the water. And you can see a very thick crust of marine life, of oysters and tube worms and coralline algae that are adding to the biodiversity. And also they're helping us become more resistant to erosion, for example. Next slide. We're not only seeing a healthier ecosystem, we're actually providing through design more biological niches, better water quality because we're going to have a lot more filter feeders. We can, through really opening the substrate to competition with local native species, we can block out the dominance of invasive species and overall also reach a much more aesthetic habitat. Next slide. One of the advantages of working with nature and actually harnessing the marina infrastructure, in this case, for biological productivity, is that we're also gaining protection to the concrete, as opposed to seeing the marine life on the seawalls as a problem, as a fouling. We're seeing bioprotection. We're seeing that these organisms are actually making the concrete stronger over time, help resist to erosion and corrosion, and absorption of wave energy, which could end up in reducing the maintenance on these structures. Next slide. In addition, and this is a big problem across the globe now, is to deal with the carbon footprint of these structures and specifically of the concrete industry. If we invite marine life to thrive on the miles and miles of docking spaces that we have, we can actually create an active carbon sink. The process of calcification, these organisms are taking CO2 from the water and making it into calcium carbonate and locking it basically forever. And therefore, we can have a reduction in the carbon footprint with environmentally sensitive technologies. Next slide, please. And here I want to really quickly give you a couple of marina examples. So this is a marina in Israel. This is just a demonstration of a seawall panel that has a design that accommodates for local fish. And you can see that within 24 months, we received a very large biodiversity. We typically manage to see double the biodiversity compared to a regular flat seawall. And we're also seeing an increase in the species richness and the productivity. Next slide is an example from another marina in Monaco, for example. And here we really just integrated a few tide pools into the riprap. And we really made the urban nature more accessible for the users and really uplifted the ecosystem. But even if you look on the top, you'll see that these types of technologies can be integrated to so many features of the marina, from the seawalls to the riprap to the docks. Even the floating docks are many times made of concrete pontoons. And we need to think about how can we harness these structures to have more ecosystem services. Next slide is, I think, one of the last case studies. I'm hoping we have time. This is in a military port, actually, and here you can really see the difference between regular concrete armor blocks and the armor blocks that we have designed and enhanced. And you can literally see it with your own eyes, how we have more oysters, more diversity. And in this case, we also proved to have less invasive species. Next slide is where I wanted to also talk about some of the advantages of these kind of thinking with respect to permitting. So a lot of these projects, when you go into the permit of the marina, you need to mitigate for the environmental impacts. It has to be under the impact statement, or even in the US, it has to be mitigated under a mitigation bank. There's actually a penalty for disrupting the seabed. And we have had some successes to integrate ecological features into those structures and to reduce the mitigation penalty by as much as 50%. And also to facilitate the actual permit, getting it faster, because they see the value in habitat creation as opposed to just kind of taking the space of the marine life. And really, last slide is this concept of when we are building in the marine environment, we need to think about kind of a triple bottom line. Next slide, please. That's the last one, I promise. And to really bring a win-win solution of thinking about the structure, the structural integrity. Everything has to be in compliance with the strict requirements of marine construction, but also to think about the health of the ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imrit. I have one question for you. What is the incentive for marinas to use this technology when they are revenue driven, where this is going in the future?
So hopefully with time, there will be more regulations quite similar to maybe the blue flag plan that is existing in the Mediterranean, in other plans. When to get certified for a more sustainable marina, you have to also take into consideration the environment and also to utilize ecological engineering as a part of the design. In that case, it will integrate into your ability to do a compliance. At the moment, not all countries have strict regulations on mitigation, and therefore the, let's say, the return on investment is not as clear. In the US, as I mentioned, we can really see a reduction of cost because of reduction of mitigation penalties. In Europe, we've seen a demand in cases, for example, in Holland and in France and in the UK, for integrating, let's say, 20 or 13% ecological considerations into those projects in order to just be able to perform the job. So I think with time, hopefully, we will have more regulations that will enforce these types of innovations to be an integral part of the project.
Thank you very much, Imrit. We'll have some more questions at the end of the session. Moderators, you have so many questions. If you can answer them directly, and we'll also ask them all at the end of the session. We are moving now to Ian. A lot has been said about the challenges of the marina market. It seems that in a way, every marina has its own circumstances and unique situation, which cause the development of unique requirements, different type of ownership, varying countries and geographics, and climate differences that cause different boating habits. These unique conditions requires us to think about how we reduce barriers for the innovation and what should we change in our marina management conception. Ian Archibald is here with us to discuss the trends in technology and how can we bring some of them into the marina market without disrupting our activity or overwhelming our system. Ian is an experienced entrepreneur, former professional skipper, and writer. He holds an MBA in information technology and has been building technology for boaters and marine industry at his company Swell Advantage for over 5 years now. Ian, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Aidan. Yeah, hello everybody. Really great to have Tom go up and Pontus go up. Really, Tom giving a sort of industry challenge perspective, and Pontus, the hardware side of we produce such great hardware for boaters and such great tools, and that sort of connection to the marina is really a gap that we're working towards filling. So my goal here is to add a little bit of context that at a bit of a higher level as far as the technology gives you an idea of why technology is being applied in marinas through automation, and then some of the technologies that are coming in through society as a whole and how they'll impact marina operations. So next slide, please. So talking about automation, automation is really applying technology to complexity to reduce the complexity and get better outcomes for people. At the end of the day, technology is an enabler, allowing us to do what we want to do better. So if you think of a marina, the relationship between a boater and the marina is pretty straightforward. It goes through a pattern. And what makes marina management hard isn't the individual interactions with the boater, it's the complexity of when you add hundreds, sometimes thousands of boaters into the mix and all those moving pieces. So there's a real opportunity to apply technology to marina operations and customer service to get better outcomes both for the entities as businesses and the customers, the boaters at the other end. So next slide, please. So what does modern automation look like? How's technology creeping into our lives to change it? And there's a lot of hype right now around self-driving vehicles, robots doing the jobs of humans. We've seen that in manufacturing for years. We're starting to see that come into everything from food production now to the Roomba that cleans your house, sort of a wide variety of robots entering into our lives. Increasingly, communication is being automated. So chatbots, when you call your bank and they've got the automated system to sometimes take you down a rabbit hole, but everything's evolving. Algorithms and machine learning, and these are things that are happening oftentimes behind the scenes with a lot of the services you use. So algorithms are really if-then scenarios that computers run through, sort of math-based, which give outcomes. So again, that choosing what slip people go into. That's a great job for an algorithm because it's able to take all of the different criteria and make suggestions to either the manager who's placing the boat in the slip or a not fully automated system actually place the boat in the most efficient slip for the organization's goals or the outcomes that they want. Machine learning and AI are a little bit more complex. We're not going to go into that in a lot of depth, but it's really taking huge data sets. And the idea is that, these programs learn from these data sets and are able to, in the case of machine learning, give you outcomes, that might not be obvious otherwise. And in AI, actually make decisions and have an outcome. So sensors is something that's growing in popularity. We're seeing them more and more in marinas, definitely, with companies like Garmin. That's sensors really is at the core of a lot of the products. And You know, as boaters, we're very used to having sensors around us, you know, informing us and giving us information to make decisions. And you know, once those sensors start giving us information about the marinas, whether that's through machine vision, which is the analyzing of video images or still images by computers or other types of sensors. And lastly, you know, platforms, marketplaces, networks. So as Ponas was talking about, really, it's that connective nature of everything and the ability to facilitate communication, whether through individuals or communication between individuals or individuals and, you know, these sensors or other systems to get outcomes. And, you know, the boat sharing network is one that we're seeing a real rise in, where people don't want to own their own boats. So they're in these clubs that allow them to share the boats. We're also seeing them with transient berthage. You know, here in North America, Snag-a-Slip and Dockwar are two of them that are growing in popularity, so that, you know, it's really resources, making those connections to get a better outcome. So we're seeing these more and more in the industry and sort of coming to the fore. Next slide, please. So, you know, specifically for marinas, what can we expect? Well, the good news is that, you know, in a marina, the differentiator will often be your personal customer service and the community that you create in the marina. And there's a certain deft touch in that. I don't see anytime soon where a machine learning algorithm is going to create an amazing community in your marina. So there's definite barriers to technology, or areas that technology is going to have a harder time connecting. But if you look at customer service, you know, Tom talked about it a little bit, you know, using WhatsApp. Our own system enables text message, so you can text back and forth with your boaters. But really, you know, a lot of those interactions that a boater has with a marina, i.e. like, hey, you know, I'd like my boat prepped for Friday with bags of ice and fueled up and wet down, or launch and haul out scheduling. There's so many things in marina customer service that can be automated, because, you know, they're just a transactional communication that's very repetitive. Smart marinas, we talked about that briefly, but, you know, just putting those sensors and different technologies in the marina to automate it. Interesting company in San Diego called MarineSync that's doing smart pedestals. But we're going to see that more and more coming out. Dry stack is something that is, you know, perfect for automation. Everything from the placing of the boats to the scheduling. You know, there's a lot of companies that are automating dry stack management more and more, and I think that's probably going to be the first fully automated, you know, hands-off kind of service that hits a lot of markets. And then that optimization, so Tom talked a little bit about, you know, those business outcomes of you know, my favorite is overages. So, you know, how much overage do you have in a slip, and getting the most overage given the boats that you have and the slips that you have results in more revenue. So, you know, how do we look at, you know, these as sort of more math problems, and are able to provide marine operators with the right information to make the best economic decisions. Next slide, please. So when are a lot of these technologies going to come out? And one of my favorite things in the world of technological development is this thing called the Gartner hype cycle. And what this alludes to or answers is that idea of, oftentimes in our society, we get these new technologies and they capture people's imagination. And you get this line of hype where it's building up. And I think automated vehicles or self-driving vehicles is a perfect example right now, because for years it's just been hammering us in the news. And the past year or so, there's less and less news about it. So that hype is actually going down. And meanwhile, there's all these people behind the scenes working on refining the technology and getting it ready for mass adoption. And then it just sort of creeps in the adoption more and more. And all of a sudden, it's just part of our lives. So if you're a tech nerd or really sort of curious, when are these technologies going to come down the pipeline? Gartner's a great resource. So self-driving vehicles, we're still a ways away from that. There's a lot of complexity. They're fine on highways, restricted use highways a lot of times, but when you start getting into a city environment, we're still a ways away from true self-driving vehicles. Smart robots, so those are robots that essentially combine aspects of machine learning and artificial intelligence to make decisions and assist. Chatbots are already here to a certain extent. They can handle very basic functions, but in the next few years, we're going to see them really start to take over a lot of those front of service customer service or front of house customer service roles, and a lot of your sort of general interactions. Algorithms and especially machine learning are still very much alive, and same with sensors. So yeah, I wanted to leave some time for questions here, but that's sort of a general sort of high level view of what we can expect in our industry.
Thank you, Ian. We don't have so much time, so one question and then we'll go to the Q&A at the end of it. Do you think marina market is innovation friendly?
I think Tom answered that already on some levels. It's not. There's a few factors. One is just the size of the industry. Personally, I see it as a Goldilocks industry where it's not big enough to attract a lot of that sort of hardcore venture capital funding. They want returns that are quite outsized. I think that you can build a $10 to $50 million technology company in our industry, but it's hard to build beyond that. I see that as a Goldilocks industry because it means we're not competing against all that VC dollars. But another factor is the natural sales cycle where you have so little consolidation. And go back to what Tom said about we're seeing more and more of that consolidation, which drives innovation. But it's hard to convince some little mom and pop operation to invest in technology. And then you just have the natural seasonality of the industry. Here in North America, I don't really sell any software, very little software between April and September because that's when people are in the water servicing their customers. So, the sales cycle of the technology is naturally elongated. The fragmentation of the industry means that you need to work harder for those sales, and those sales tend to be lower dollar amounts. These all impact the ability for innovators like myself and you, Aidan, and Garmin to bring these technologies to the industry because there's just not as much capital. And the people think that, oh, you build software, you spend 6 months, working on it, and you come up with this product, but as Tom mentioned, it's really a years-long process where it can take half a decade for the technology to mature enough to service the needs of the customers, which is further complicated by the diversity in the customers that you serve, everything from whether they're government or private or yacht clubs, whether they're dry stack, whether they're a super yacht, high touch facility, whether they've got a service yard. It's so hard to service the industry. And I don't, what I'm getting at is that it's not any individual's fault. I don't think it's, we can point fingers as to why it's harder for the marine industry and recreational boating. The companies like Garmin have done a phenomenal job at navigation tools and stuff, but there's real structural issues as to why the industry is not as friendly and can innovate as well as others.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have a question about how we can improve the departure and arrival experience from John. it still feels very old-fashioned using VHF and a little interaction with the boat and mapping through the berth. So I see that Puntas has already answered this, but I would love to hear Ian and Thomas on this as well. But also Puntas is, I think, unmuted himself to answer. So please, short answers because we don't have so much time.
No, well, like I wrote in my answer, I mean, the technology is there from our side to be able to let them to do this communication automatically, of course. Then it's all about the platforms. Who should we communicate to and how should it operate? That is the bottleneck there.
And just to add on that, I think the demographics of boaters is also a challenge as far as technology adoption. And, you know, it's really important that we don't point fingers and say, oh, you know, it's all because of old people. But it just means that, you know, if you look at technology adoption curves across demographics, because you know, you've got some people, like younger people, like using WhatsApp and other tools, and then you've got other people, usually older generations, that really want that VHF. You know, it makes it that much harder for not just the operators, but also the people trying to provide solutions to the operators. You know, I think it's going to be a little messy for a long time, and I don't think there's any getting around that on the communication side.
Agreed.
Thomas?
I agree.
Great. We have another question from Kishmer, my colleague from Croatia, to Puntas. How do you see the interaction between the boats and marinas in the future? And what kind of information can you collect and share with the marinas?
Yeah, like I wrote in my answer, I mean, literally from a technology standpoint, we can collect all the technical data from any vessel about the size and the depth and the tank levels or fault codes, or if there is any type of issue, of course, with the vessel. I mean, further down the line, we could potentially, with the captain's or the owner's approval, provide more information that this vessel has got a family with 2 kids that are 12 years old and 2 parents that are 39, and they like sushi and they like to watch Star Wars or whatever it is, so that then marinas could promote themselves in different ways. I mean, literally technical things, I mean, that's pretty straightforward, since everything is connected onto the vessels. We know everything about the boat. And of course we could share the demographics, but then we get into GDPR and we get into a lot of other obstacles of doing things like that.
Yeah. I have a question for Shimrit, Albert, and Giovanni. What about the public legitimacy? Maybe this can be open for more acceptance of future building of marinas? Please answer shortly, each one of you.
Giovanni?
Shimrit.
So I think that we definitely need to integrate these concepts into future marinas, and I think it will also help kind of get over some of that, I'd say maybe bad reputation about developing our coastlines. Obviously, we need to do it in a way that justifies that and not a blue wash or greenwash. So anything we do has to be genuine and backed up by, I think, science, and that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I fully agree, and it could increase the whole efficiency of the new marina. For our technology, you need only energy, but it's not easy to reach the right amount of energy at the port entrance, often in the old marinas. But if you integrate the design of the marina with all the energy supply, it's all easier.
Thank you. Albert?
I fully agree with both of them. It's let's say it can be integrated, and that there's a desperately need for integration. If you look at the studies done by the University of Bologna together with Trevi, and what the results are, And also in relation to the biodiversity, which was mentioned to in another panel, it's very important to integrate it in the design in the beginning. And that was also the purpose of the PIANC report in that particular time. And we will update the PIANC report anyway.
Thank you. This question is for each and every one of you, and this will be the last question. What we can do in order to pursue the vision, what we can do together as an industry to continue the growth and enjoy the boost that we have received from the latest situation. So we will start with Tom.
I was waiting to copy somebody else's good answer. Look, I think what comes to me the most is having learned a lot from other people on this panel is really everybody is very clear on their own problems, but less sensitive to other people's problems, and also less sensitive to solutions that other people might have that may be applicable to your own problem. So I think that more sharing of knowledge actually is what's going to be the most helpful here, because there's a lot of smart people in this industry generally that are really passionate about it. So to me, that would be the one thing to keep doing.
It's a good one. Puntos?
Well, I'm going to steal Tom's then. He went first. No, but I think there will be a lot more interaction maybe with companies that you normally don't interact with, because you need to solve the customer's problem, and also be very open-minded that different customers will have different problems that you will have to solve. So literally look at the problem you'd like to solve and then find the right partners to solve it with. And I think one thing that Chikrit talks about as well is the environment. The environment is going to be a key thing for the future when it comes to hybrid boats, electric boats, and charging and all that stuff. And that is something that I think we all need to think about and do better. Literally.
Thank you, Albert.
Yeah, quite a lot. Just to mention, integration is very important. Not only if we look, let's say, at the main targets of sustainability, which is environment, energy, economical and social, health and safety in this case. We need to integrate that with all the new designs, but not only for marinas, but also for boats, yachts, super yachts, whatever. But also looking at other industries, what is, let's say, on this moment developed. I heard a lot about hybrid, but also within hybrid, there are different ways of energy, like hydrogen, the new hydrogen strategy from the European Commission, not only Europe, but also within the UN. So integration is very important. And secondly, everybody has to understand climate change has an impact on our industry, but according to the UN, biodiversity has the same impact. And that's too little appointed by not only our industry, but also by governmental authorities.
Thank you, Albert. Giovanni? You're on mute.
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree with the other presenters, so I don't have to add anything.
Okay, yeah.
Hi. I think, Adan, you and I have talked about this about, I think we've got this opportunity right now in that the industry was in decline for a lot of years. The whole world's taking a break right now, and recreational boating is going through a boom like we haven't seen in a very long time. And this is an amazing opportunity for us as an industry. And one of the things that surprised me when I came into the industry is the amount of sort of competing that happens with each other, when really, as an industry as a whole, that's where a lot of the focus needs to go. So as technology providers, I don't feel like I'm competing a lot against other software, enterprise software providers, because there's so little adoption of modern cloud-based enterprise software in the industry. You know, our competition as an industry is the Instagram and YouTube and, you know, all of these distractions that were so prevalent in the world before the pandemic hit. And we as an industry have this amazing opportunity now to say, hey, things have gotten real. It's really about your family, your close friends. And we as an industry can provide a vehicle to spend more time with your family, to spend more time with your friends. And I think that it's this huge opportunity. We've got to stop looking at the marina across the bay as the competition and start looking at them as, oh, well, you know, if we have a friendly competition, more races, you know, a little bit of fun smack talk and less the aggressive, you know, fighting within the industry, there's a huge opportunity for everybody right now.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Shimrit, you're the last one. We are already across the time, but I want you to.
Yeah, I will do it super quick. Biodiversity, sustainability, resilience. I think the core is to collaborate. We need to collaborate across disciplines and across the value chain of the project in order to get a more holistic project that is in kind of in tune with nature and the users. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for the fascinating discussion. Thank you for the speakers. Thank you to ICOMIA Secretariat for the organization. I think it is clear that technological developments create a lot of opportunities for us, and COVID-19 can accelerate some of the processes that we thought are still away from us. I hope to see you all in the future events of ICOMIA, and of course, in the next week's session, Vision Change, moderated by Melanie Sims. Thank you very much, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.